The janitor's quiet dignity. Thomas Miller pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Hastings' corporate tower. His worn work boots made soft sounds against the polished floor. It was nearly 8 in the evening, and most of the executives had gone home to their families. But not all of them. Thomas had been working as a janitor there for 14 years now, ever since his wife Margaret passed away from cancer. Back then, his daughter Lily was only 5 years old. The janitorial position didn't pay much, but it came with health insurance and predictable hours. Most importantly, it let him pick Lily up from school every afternoon. He was 56 now. Lily was 19, finishing her first year of college. Every dollar he'd saved over the years, every extra shift he'd worked, had gone toward making sure she could follow her dreams. She was studying to become a teacher. The thought filled Thomas with quiet pride. As he wiped down the water fountain near the executive conference room, he heard raised voices inside. Laughter that had an edge to it. The kind that makes you uncomfortable. "I swear, even the janitor could probably do better than this," someone said, their voice dripping with frustration. "This translation is completely worthless. Utterly useless." Thomas paused, his hand still on the fountain. He recognized the voice. It belonged to Richard Blackwood, one of the company's vice presidents. Through the glass walls, Thomas could see a dozen executives in expensive suits, gathered around the conference table. "We've got that major deal with the Chilean investors tomorrow morning," Richard continued, slamming his hand on the table. "And this so-called professional translation service has given us complete gibberish. We might as well throw darts at a Spanish dictionary." More laughter rippled through the room. Some genuine amusement, some nervous. Thomas stood there for a long moment, weighing something in his mind. Then he took a breath and gently knocked on the glass door. The room fell silent instantly. Heads turned. Some faces showed annoyance at being interrupted. Others just looked right through him, the way people often looked at janitors. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Thomas said softly, his voice calm and respectful. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I overheard your difficulty. Would you mind if I took a look at those documents?" Richard Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. A few executives exchanged glances. Someone in the back snickered. "You speak Spanish?" Richard asked, his tone somewhere between skeptical and amused. "Yes, sir," Thomas replied simply. "I do." Richard leaned back in his leather chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. He looked around at his colleagues, clearly entertained. Well, tell you what, friend. You see these papers?" He tapped the stack of documents on the table. "If you can actually translate this properly and have it on my desk by 7 tomorrow morning, I'll write you a check for my entire month's salary. How does that sound?" The other executives chuckled. Someone whispered something Thomas couldn't quite hear. He saw a few of them shaking their heads, smiling at what they clearly thought was Richard's clever joke. Thomas walked slowly to the table. His calloused, work-worn hands picked up the papers carefully, as if they were something precious. He adjusted his reading glasses, the ones held together at the corner with a bit of tape. For several moments, he read in silence while the room watched. Then he looked up, his expression thoughtful and kind. "With respect, Mr. Blackwood," Thomas said gently, "this isn't Spanish. These documents are in Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese, to be specific. And whoever attempted this translation made several critical errors. They confused legal terminology that doesn't transfer directly between languages. Some of these clauses, as written, would actually obligate your company to terms I'm fairly certain you didn't intend." The smiles faded. The room went very still. "I can have this properly translated for you by tomorrow morning," Thomas continued, his voice never rising, never taking on any edge. "But I don't want your salary, sir. I just thought perhaps I could help." A younger executive, a woman named Jennifer, who'd always treated Thomas with kindness, spoke up first. Her voice was gentle. "You read Portuguese? How did you learn that?" Thomas carefully set the papers back down. "My wife was from Rio de Janeiro, Margaret. We met 30 years ago when I was in the Navy, stationed there for 3 years. She taught me everything. Her language, her culture, how to see the world through different eyes." He paused, and something in his expression made the room feel suddenly smaller, more human. "After she passed, I kept up with it. Read Portuguese newspapers online. watched Brazilian films. It felt like keeping a piece of her alive, you know? Like she was still teaching me things. His voice was soft, but every person in that room heard every word. Margaret used to tell me that every language you learn gives you a new soul. I never forgot that. Never stopped learning. Richard Blackwood stood up slowly. The smug expression was completely gone from his face. He walked around the table and extended his hand to Thomas. I owe you an apology, Mr. Miller. That was disrespectful. Truly disrespectful. Thomas shook his hand firmly. We all make assumptions sometimes, Mr. Blackwood. I've certainly made my share. No offense taken. Would you really be willing to help us with this? Richard asked, and now there was something different in his voice. Respect. Real respect. Of course, Thomas said. I'd be honored to help. Let me take these home tonight. I'll make sure everything is accurate and culturally appropriate for your meeting. That night, Thomas sat at his small kitchen table. The same table where he and Margaret used to sit together, where they'd helped Lily with her homework for years. The lamp overhead cast a warm, golden light across the documents. Lily came in from her evening class and set a cup of coffee beside him. She sat down across from her father, watching him work with careful precision. Dad, she said softly, wonderingly, I never knew you could do this kind of thing. This looks so complicated. Thomas looked up at his daughter. She had her mother's gentle eyes, her mother's generous heart. Sweetheart, I've learned a lot of things over the years. The uniform someone wears for work doesn't tell you what they carry in their heart or in their mind. Your mother taught me that. He worked late into the night, carefully translating every clause, every nuance. He made notes in the margins about cultural considerations, about phrases that might be misunderstood, about the proper way to show respect in Brazilian business culture. The next morning, Thomas arrived at the building an hour before his usual shift. He placed the completed translation on Richard Blackwood's desk, along with 3 pages of handwritten notes explaining the context and cultural sensitivity needed for the negotiation. The meeting that day was apparently a tremendous success. The Chilean investors were so impressed by the accuracy and cultural awareness that they insisted on expanding the deal. The contract ended up being worth considerably more than anyone had anticipated. That evening, as Thomas was finishing his rounds, Richard Blackwood found him. Thomas, could you come to my office for a moment? The word had spread through the entire company by then. Jennifer was there. So were 2 of the senior partners Thomas had only seen from a distance. Thomas, Richard began, and his voice was different than it had been the night before. Quieter, more genuine. We've been talking. We'd like to offer you a position as a language consultant. Your own office, full benefits, a salary that's honestly 4 times what you're making now. You've more than earned it. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. He pulled his wallet from his back pocket, worn smooth from years of carrying. From inside, he removed a photograph, creased and faded. It showed a younger version of himself with Margaret, both of them laughing on a beach in Brazil, the ocean sparkling behind them. That's very kind of you, Mr. Blackwood. Truly, it means more than you know, Thomas said softly. But I'd like to suggest something different, if I may. He held up the photograph so they could see it. My Lily is in college now, studying to be a teacher. Just finished her first year. What would mean the world to me is if the company might consider setting up a scholarship. Not a free ride, mind you. I'll keep doing my job here, the work I've always done. But if translations come up, I'd be happy to help with those too. Does that seem fair? Richard looked at the photograph. He looked at Thomas's weathered, honest face. He thought about his own father, who'd worked in a factory for 35 years to put Richard through business school. How easy it had been to forget where real character comes from. We're going to do both, Thomas, he said quietly. Full scholarship for Lily, and you're getting that position whether you like it or not. You've shown us something important, about respect, about not judging people by their job title. You've earned this. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. He wasn't a man who cried often. Margaret used to joke that he saved up his tears for the moments that truly mattered. This was one of those moments. 3 years later, Thomas sat in a university auditorium watching Lily receive her teaching degree. She graduated with honors. Sitting beside him were Richard and Jennifer, who'd become genuine friends. They'd even met his grandchildren, born just last year. After the ceremony, Lily hugged her father so tight he could barely breathe. "Mom would be so incredibly proud of you, Dad." Thomas held his daughter close, this beautiful young woman who carried Margaret's kindness into the world. She'd be proud of both,